If you have ever been in a relationship where you shared everything, your passwords, your finances, your career, your entire public image, this story is going to make your blood run cold. It is a terrifying look into how love, greed, and social media clout can mix into a toxic cocktail that can ruin a person's life overnight. Let us get straight into their words. I think the hardest part about being publicly ruined is watching the numbers drop in real time. Imagine sitting at your desk, refreshing a web page, and watching 100 subscribers disappear every single second. Imagine your phone buzzing so rapidly from death threats and hate comments that the battery literally overheats and dies in your hand. That was my reality exactly 6 months ago. To understand how I got there, you have to understand who I was. I ran a relatively successful YouTube and streaming channel focused on tech commentary and lifestyle vlogging. I had spent 4 years grinding from zero to about 800,000 subscribers. It was my full-time job, my passion, and my entire livelihood. And for the last 3 of those years, my girlfriend Chloe was right there by my side. Chloe and I met before the channel blew up. When we started dating, she was working a miserable retail job, and I was pulling 90-hour weeks trying to edit videos. As the channel grew, we decided to turn it into a joint venture. She quit her job to become my full-time manager and occasional co-host. The audience absolutely loved her. She was beautiful, charming, and brought a soft, relatable energy to my technical rants. We became a power couple in our niche. We shared a beautiful apartment in Austin, Texas. We started a joint business LLC, and we shared every single password to every account we owned. I trusted her implicitly. I thought we were building a life together. The nightmare began on a Tuesday evening in November. We had just celebrated reaching a massive milestone, signing a life-changing 6-figure sponsorship deal with a major global beverage brand. It was the kind of contract that meant we could finally look into buying a house. I was in the middle of a live broadcast, doing a casual Q&A with my audience, when my chat suddenly started moving at light speed. At first, I thought we were being raided by another streamer, but then the messages turned ugly. Disgusting. Trash. Cancel this abuser. Look at Twitter. My heart did a violent flip in my chest. I tried to maintain my composure, laughing it off on camera, but the chat was becoming entirely unmanageable. Mod filters couldn't keep up. I told my audience I was experiencing some technical difficulties, abruptly ended the stream, and opened Twitter on my second monitor. There, pinned at the top of the trending tab, was a thread with my name on it. It had over 50,000 retweets in less than an hour. The thread was posted by a burner account, and it contained a Google Drive link filled with dozens of screenshots. They were screenshots of private Discord messages, Instagram DMs, and text conversations allegedly written by me. In these messages, I was saying the most horrific, toxic things imaginable. I was making derogatory remarks about my own fan base, using racial slurs, bragging about manipulating my sponsors, and worst of all, there were text messages to an unknown number, where I was talking about how much I hated Chloe, how I was only using her for the channel's algorithm, and how I was actively looking for ways to kick her out of the apartment and leave her penniless. I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the screen. My brain literally refused to process what I was seeing because I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had never written a single one of those words. I had never held those conversations. Before I could even stand up, the door to my studio slammed open. Chloe stood there, tears streaming down her face, holding her phone. She looked at me with a mixture of pure horror and heartbreak. "Is this real?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "Tell me this isn't real, Liam." I jumped up, trying to grab her hands, telling her it was a hoax, that someone had fabricated the screenshots using a fake account or inspect element. But she pulled away from me, sobbing hysterically. She told me she couldn't look at me, packed a small duffel bag right in front of me, and walked out of the apartment, saying she was going to stay at a hotel. Within 24 hours, my life was completely destroyed. The global beverage brand terminated our 6-figure contract under a moral turpitude clause, demanding the immediate return of our advance payment. My management agency dropped me. My subscriber count plummeted by 300,000. Creators I had known for years were making 20-minute commentary videos calling me a sociopath. I was entirely toxic. I spent 3 days in a state of absolute catatonia, locked inside my apartment, drinking black coffee and staring at the wall. I tried to put out an apology video stating that the screenshots were fake, but the internet completely tore it apart. "He's just mad he got caught," the comments said, but as the initial shock began to fade, my logical brain started kicking back in. I am a tech guy. I know how digital footprints work. I decided that if I was going down, I was going to find out exactly who engineered this fake database to ruin me. I downloaded the raw screenshots from the public Google Drive folder and began analyzing them. I noticed that the screenshots of my alleged Discord DMs showed a very specific UI glitch in the top right corner, a distorted pixel overlay that only happens when you use a custom, outdated beta theme on the desktop app. I opened my own Discord desktop app. My theme was standard dark mode. But do you know whose Discord app had that specific custom beta theme? Chloe's laptop. A cold, sickening dread settled into my chest. I told myself I was being paranoid. Why would Chloe ruin the very brand that was paying for her lifestyle? It made absolutely no sense. But the seed of doubt was planted. Since Chloe was still logged into our joint business email and our shared iCloud on my secondary studio iPad, I decided to do something I had never done in our entire relationship. I started digging through her digital backups. And that is when the first massive plot twist hit me like a physical blow. I found a hidden, password-protected folder in her iCloud backup. Because we used a variation of the same password for everything, I guessed it on the second try. Inside that folder were hundreds of screen recordings. The recordings showed Chloe's laptop screen. It showed her utilizing an advanced, local AI language model. She had fed the AI thousands of my old personal text messages, scripts, and emails, training it to perfectly replicate my specific syntax, my slang, and my typing habits. The screen recordings showed her typing prompts into the AI like, "Write a toxic message from Liam complaining about his fans using his voice," and "Write a text from Liam admitting he is cheating on Chloe." She had spent 3 months meticulously generating these fake conversations, pasting them into dummy accounts, and capturing the screenshots. She was the burner account. She was the one who had engineered my public execution. I sat back in my chair, my chest heaving, trying to comprehend why the woman I loved, the woman I wanted to marry, would systematically murder my career. But the rabbit hole went so much deeper. As I kept digging through the log files and her deleted emails from the past month, the second, far more sinister plot twist dropped. Chloe hadn't just done this out of malice or a desire for internet fame. She had done it because of a massive corporate acquisition. 2 months prior, a massive digital media conglomerate had approached us, offering to buy out our channel's brand, our LLC, and our entire video catalog for $2 million. I had turned the offer down flat because I wanted to maintain our independent creative freedom. But Chloe had wanted the money. I found a secret contract signed by Chloe and the executives of that exact media conglomerate, dated 3 weeks before my cancellation. The strategy was brilliant and terrifying. Under our joint LLC operating agreement, if the brand was healthy, any sale required a unanimous vote from both of us. However, there was a specific clause stating that if one partner engaged in illegal activity or public conduct that permanently bankrupts the company's asset value, the other partner could legally dissolve the partnership, seize sole control of the LLC's intellectual property, and liquidate the assets to protect themselves from financial ruin. Chloe didn't want to build a channel with me anymore. She wanted the $2 million. By fabricating the screenshots and orchestrating my cancellation, she triggered the emergency clause in our LLC. She made me entirely radioactive, allowing her to legally strip me of my ownership rights to the channel, the catalog, and the brand. And the final piece of the puzzle. The media conglomerate didn't care about my reputation. They didn't want me. They wanted our massive back catalog of over 400 evergreen tech videos, which generated tens of thousands of dollars in passive AdSense revenue every single month. They were going to buy the channel from Chloe as a solo owner for a slightly reduced price, rebrand it entirely around her, and pocket the passive income, leaving me completely broke, discredited, and legally blocked from ever reclaiming my work. I looked at the clock. It was 2:00 a.m. I knew that Chloe's lawyers were scheduled to file the emergency partnership dissolution paperwork in court the upcoming Monday morning. I had exactly 48 hours to move. I didn't make a dramatic expose video. I didn't tweet. I knew that the court of public opinion was fickle, but a court of law required hard forensic data. I hired a high-profile digital forensics attorney and handed over the entire iPad, the iCloud backups, the raw AI generation logs, and the screen recordings of Chloe creating the fake evidence. My lawyer compiled it into a massive federal lawsuit for tortious interference, fraud, and defamation. On Monday morning, just as Chloe and her corporate handlers walked into the courthouse to strip me of my life's work, my legal team served them with the federal lawsuit right in the building lobby. The look of sheer, unadulterated terror on Chloe's face when she realized I had found the hidden iCloud folder is something I will never forget. The corporate executives from the media conglomerate immediately realized they had been caught participating in a fraudulent scheme to hijack intellectual property. Within 2 hours, their legal team contacted my lawyer, completely abandoning the deal and trying to distance themselves from Chloe entirely. The fallout was swift. Because the evidence of her fraud was completely undeniable, the joint partnership dissolution was thrown out. I was able to use the lawsuit to force Chloe to legally sign over her entire 50% share of the LLC back to me for the price of $1 single, effectively giving me sole, absolute control over my channel and my brand once again. But the damage to my public image was already done. You cannot easily cancel someone. Even though my lawyer released the official forensic report and the lawsuit details, my subscriber count has never fully recovered. I still get comments from people who only remember the headlines and think I am a toxic monster. I had to completely rebrand the channel, change the content direction, and move out of the Austin apartment because the memories there were suffocating. Chloe completely disappeared from the internet. She moved back to her hometown, her reputation in the media industry entirely dead, facing a massive mountain of legal debt from the defamation suit that we eventually settled out of court. The scariest part of this entire experience isn't the financial loss or the stress. It is the realization that you can sleep next to someone for 3 years, share a bed with them, tell them your deepest fears, and have absolutely no idea that behind their eyes, they are calculating the exact monetary value of your destruction. Always keep your professional assets completely separate from your romantic life. Never hand over absolute digital control to anyone, no matter how much you love them. Because when millions of dollars and a clean exit strategy are on the line, love can turn into a cold, blooded business transaction faster than you can hit record. Sometimes, the most dangerous entity in your life isn't a faceless corporate entity or a random cybercriminal on the internet. It is the person sitting across from you at the dinner table, smiling, pouring you a glass of wine, and quietly calculating the exact monetary value of your complete destruction. An incredible, deeply unsettling transcript was forwarded to my professional inbox last night, and it completely redefines the concept of a modern relationship nightmare. This isn't a standard story of infidelity or a messy breakup. It is a highly sophisticated, cold-blooded execution of financial and legal manipulation that will make you look at your own domestic life with a sudden wave of paranoia. The individual who wrote this document has asked to remain entirely nameless, as the legal dust from this situation is still settling in a federal court. Let's look directly at the narrative they provided. I think the exact moment my reality shattered was at 3:14 a.m. on a Thursday. I remember the time perfectly because the blue light from my bedroom digital clock was reflecting off the face of my hardware security key. A physical YubiKey that was supposed to never leave my sight. That little plastic device was the master access token to a proprietary, multi-billion-dollar algorithmic trading database owned by the high-frequency Wall Street firm where I worked as a lead data infrastructure engineer. It was supposed to be sitting securely on my bedside nightstand, right next to my wallet. Instead, it was missing. And when I quietly walked down the dark hallway of our suburban home, I saw a sliver of light coming from the home office. To understand how I ended up standing in that hallway, paralyzed by a sudden, freezing wave of dread, you have to understand the dynamic between my fiancée Vanessa and me. We had been together for 5 years. We met in college, struggled through our early 20s together, and finally reached a point where we were ready to settle down. I was pulling in a very comfortable mid-six-figure salary at my fintech firm, but the real estate market was brutal. Vanessa worked in digital marketing, but during the tech layoffs, her entire department was eliminated overnight. She was devastated. The dream house we wanted, a beautiful mid-century property overlooking the valley, suddenly felt completely out of reach. That was when Vanessa pitched me a concept that, at the time, sounded like a stroke of modern financial genius. She called it strategic overemployment. She told me that a massive, global logistics conglomerate was looking for a senior cloud architect. The role was fully remote, asynchronous, and paid an incredible salary. Vanessa's plan was simple, yet incredibly risky. I would apply for the job using her name, her clean background, and a meticulously optimized resume that blended her administrative background with my technical credentials. I would do the actual technical interviews with my camera turned off under the guise of a faulty hardware driver, or she would sit in the room and lip sync or handle the introductory calls. Once the job was secured, I would write all the code, build the data pipelines, and manage the infrastructure at night. Vanessa would handle the daytime corporate politics, sit in the daily Zoom meetings with a blurred background, read off the status updates I wrote for her, and manage the Slack communication. We would double our household income instantly, legally funneling the second salary into a corporate consultancy LLC we had set up for tax purposes. I hesitated for weeks. It felt highly unethical, a blatant violation of corporate policies, and a recipe for absolute exhaustion. But Vanessa was a master of emotional leverage. She cried, telling me she felt like a financial burden, that this was our only ticket to the life we deserved, and that she would do 100% of the domestic labor and corporate acting if I just handled the raw engineering. She looked me in the eyes and said, "We are a team, Mark. It's us against the world. Nobody is getting hurt. We are just gaming a broken corporate system." Eventually, I broke. I took the interviews, built the dummy portfolios, and within 3 weeks, Vanessa was officially hired as a senior cloud architect at the logistics firm. For the first 4 months, the machine worked with terrifying efficiency. We were generating over $30,000 a month combined. Every single morning, I would wake up at 6:00 a.m., log into my primary fintech job, and build data architectures until 5:00 p.m. Then, after a 20-minute dinner break, I would pivot to Vanessa's corporate laptop, writing cloud automation scripts and debugging server environments until midnight. Vanessa was an incredible actress. On the daytime Zoom calls, she was praised by her managers for her brilliant technical oversight and her ability to explain complex data concepts in simple terms. In reality, she was just reading a teleprompter app on her screen filled with scripts I had written for her the night before. But by month 5, the human body begins to reject a 16-hour workday. I was completely unraveling. My cognitive functions were slowing down. I was living on dangerously high doses of caffeine, and I was suffering from chronic panic attacks. Our savings account was overflowing, and we had officially secured the down payment for the Valley house. During a weekend dinner, I looked across the table at Vanessa and told her I couldn't do it anymore. I told her we needed to submit her 2-week resignation notice to the logistics firm. I expected empathy. Instead, I met a wall of absolute ice. Her entire demeanor changed. Her voice became sharp, cold, and entirely devoid of the warmth she usually utilized. She told me I was being incredibly weak, selfish, and that I was trying to sabotage the financial momentum we had spent months building. She told me we needed to run the play for at least another 6 months to maximize our investments. When I argued back, she flipped the script completely, using a terrifying form of professional blackmail. She calmly reminded me that if I quit or exposed the scheme, I was the one who had technically committed corporate fraud against a multi-billion-dollar logistics firm, and that my primary employer, the Wall Street fintech company, would immediately fire and blacklist me the moment they found out I was moonlighting for a secondary corporation using their proprietary development methods. I sat there, completely stunned, realizing that my fiancée had just subtly threatened to destroy my entire career if I stopped working as her digital ghostwriter. I went back to my desk that night, completely broken, working in a state of quiet, detached numbness. That was when the micro anomalies started appearing in my primary work environment. As a data infrastructure engineer at my fintech firm, I had automated a series of internal security triggers on my local workstation. One evening, while reviewing our home network traffic logs, I noticed a massive spike in encrypted data exfiltration occurring around 2:00 a.m., a time when I was usually completely unconscious from sheer exhaustion. The data wasn't leaving Vanessa's corporate laptop. It was leaving my corporate workstation. Someone was accessing our home router's administrative panel, bypassing my local firewall, and setting up a secure SH tunnel to export gigabytes of raw, proprietary financial data from my primary employer's servers. When I looked at the access tokens used to authorize the data download, my stomach completely dropped. The authorization utilized my unique physical hardware YubiKey. I tried to convince myself that it was a systematic glitch, an automated backup script gone wrong, but deep down, the paranoia was starting to chew through my sanity. I kept my mouth shut, but I quietly activated a hidden legacy logging script on an old Raspberry Pi that I kept plugged into a dead Ethernet port behind our smart kitchen refrigerator. It was a redundant system I had built years ago to monitor home automation, but I repurposed it to log every single MAC address and physical connection running through our local Wi-Fi router, completely independent of our main network overview. Which brings us back to that Thursday morning at 3:14 a.m. I stood outside the cracked door of our home office, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. I looked through the gap. Vanessa was sitting at the desk, illuminated by the harsh glow of my primary corporate laptop. My physical security key was plugged into the USB port. She had a phone pressed to her ear, her voice a low, hurried whisper. "The final transaction data for the Q3 trading blocks is downloading now," she said into the phone. "It's taking longer because the file size is massive, but it's routing directly through his internal access tokens. If the compliance team flags it, the digital signature belongs entirely to him. Have the offshore account ready." The moment the file transfers, I'm pulling the plug. I couldn't breathe. The woman I had loved for half a decade wasn't just exploitation heavy. She was actively executing a multi-million-dollar corporate espionage heist, using my physical security credentials to steal proprietary financial algorithms from my company, and leaving an ironclad digital paper trail that pointed entirely to me as a rogue, disgruntled employee selling data to the black market. I quietly backed away from the door, returned to the bedroom, and crawled back into bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart hammering against my ribs, until the sun came up. I realized that if I confronted her right then, she would panic, delete the evidence, and immediately trigger whatever exit strategy she had prepared, leaving me to face a federal grand jury alone. The next morning, Friday, I acted completely normal. I kissed her goodbye, told her I had to go into the physical corporate office in Manhattan for an emergency architecture review, and left the house. But I didn't go to the office. I drove to a secure, private data storage facility where I kept my old development servers. I pulled the data logs from that hidden Raspberry Pi behind the refrigerator. And that is when the final, devastating plot twist revealed the sheer scale of the trap I was in. Vanessa wasn't working alone, and she hadn't just started doing this. The logs showed that the encrypted SSH tunnel had been established 3 months prior. By tracing the destination IP address of the stolen financial data, I discovered it was routing directly to a private server owned by a high-profile corporate consulting group based in Zurich. The lead director of that consulting group was a man named Julian, the exact same high-level executive who had, randomly, reached out to Vanessa on LinkedIn 6 months ago to offer her the initial remote logistics job. The entire strategic overemployment scheme was an elaborate, beautifully orchestrated corporate honey trap. Julian's firm wanted my company's high-frequency trading algorithms, but our cybersecurity infrastructure was completely impenetrable from the outside. They knew Vanessa had been laid off, they knew we were desperate for a house, and they knew exactly how to manipulate my technical pride. They gave her the fake job specifically to force me into a state of chronic sleep deprivation, burnout, and cognitive decline. They needed me too exhausted to notice the security anomalies while providing a legitimate, looking source of massive monthly income into our joint LLC to hide the corporate espionage payouts they were funneling to Vanessa on the side. The script I found on her personal cloud backup outlined the final phase on Monday morning. Vanessa was scheduled to file an emergency legal separation, freezing our joint accounts, claiming domestic financial abuse, and fleeing the country to Switzerland under a pre-arranged corporate visa provided by Julian's firm. By the time my company noticed the massive data drain, I would be left completely alone in an empty house, holding a smoking gun, with zero financial resources to defend myself. I sat in that private data vault for 3 hours, realizing that my life was effectively over unless I played the next card perfectly. I didn't call the police. I didn't call my company's HR. Instead, I contacted the head of corporate security and internal affairs at my fintech firm via an encrypted, personal satellite phone link. I told him to meet me at a neutral location, a diner outside the city. When he arrived with 2 corporate attorneys, I didn't offer excuses or pleas for mercy. I simply slid the laptop across the table. I gave them the complete, unedited forensic package. The Raspberry Pi logs proving the MAC address of Vanessa's specific hardware executing the commands, while my personal phone's health app showed my biometric sleep data, confirming I was completely unconscious during the data drains. I handed over the secret contracts between her and Julian, the offshore wire transfers into our LLC that I had mapped through her cached browser history, and the complete script of her planned escape to Zurich. I looked the security chief in the eye and said, "I violated policy by writing code for another firm. Fire me, ruin my reputation, do whatever you have to do. But she is draining your core database in 8 hours, and I am giving you the keys to stop it." The corporate machine moves with absolute, terrifying speed when billions of dollars are at stake. They didn't fire me, not yet. They needed me to maintain the illusion for another 24 hours. That Friday night I went home. I ate dinner with Vanessa. She smiled, asked me how my day in the city was, and told me she loved me. I looked at her face and realized that the person I loved had never actually existed. She was just a projection of security and domestic bliss, used to cover a sociopathic corporate predator. I went to bed, pretended to sleep, and watched her quietly slip my YubiKey off the nightstand at 200 a.m. But this time, when she plugged the key into the laptop, she didn't access the core server. My company's security team had built a highly advanced, simulated mirror network, a digital sandbox that looked exactly like our live database, but contained entirely fabricated, corrupted algorithmic data. Vanessa spent 3 hours downloading worthless junk data, entirely unaware that federal cyber forensics teams were tracking the live connection, mapping the precise routing nodes straight to Julian's infrastructure in Zurich. At 6:00 a.m. on Saturday morning, while the sun was just beginning to hit the windows, our front door was breached. A federal task force, accompanied by corporate litigation attorneys, swarmed our home. I was handcuffed and escorted to a vehicle in the driveway, a necessary part of the legal protocol to maintain the integrity of the raid. As they led me out, I saw Vanessa. She was pinned against the kitchen counter, her face completely pale, staring at me with a look of pure, unadulterated venom. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She realized, in a single second, that the ghost employee had finally stepped out of the shadows. It has been a year since that morning. Because of my absolute transparency, and the fact that my forensic data allowed the federal government to dismantle a massive international corporate espionage ring, I avoided criminal prosecution. I signed an incredibly strict, lifetime non-disclosure agreement with my former firm, and I was quietly transitionally terminated from the industry. I lost the career I spent a decade building, I lost the Valley House, and I lost my savings to legal fees. Vanessa and Julian are currently serving significant sentences in a federal penitentiary for conspiracy, wire fraud, and economic espionage. I live in a small apartment now, working a quiet, mid-level IT management role for a local utility company. I don't use smart appliances, I don't share passwords, and I keep my hardware tokens locked inside a physical biometric safe. The corporate world talks a lot about security protocols, firewalls, and encryption keys. But the most vulnerable entry point in any system will always be the human heart. When someone offers you a plan that sounds too perfect to be true, Look closely at what they are asking you to risk. Because by the time you realize you are a pawn in their game, they've already moved your king into checkmate. It is absolutely wild how someone can construct a complete, parallel lifestyle of fraud right under your nose while sharing your bed. The level of cold-blooded planning it takes to turn your future spouse into a legal human shield for an international data heist is honestly hard to comprehend. That redundant, forgotten Raspberry Pi behind the kitchen fridge is literally the only reason that man isn't sitting in a maximum security prison right now. I want to pose a very specific question to everyone listening to this case today. If your partner came to you tomorrow with a gray area financial scheme that promised to completely solve all your life's problems, where exactly would you draw the line? At what point does a romantic compromise turn you into an indicted accomplice? Drop your thoughts in the replies below. I am incredibly curious to see how you would have navigated this level of domestic gaslighting. Hit that subscribe button if you want more deep dives into these real-life human chess matches. Protect your access tokens, and I will see you in the next file.